Hello and welcome to Lady Dynamite Creates. This is Tiffany and today I'm going to be showing you the process on my latest Sugar Skull Katrina doll. I chose this Draculaura as a base, and my previous Katrinas I did choose Laguna Blues for, so I thought this would be a nice change. Using my electric shaver, I go ahead and shave her hair down really short. Then I pop her into a cup of hot water and let her sit for a little bit to get her vinyl nice and soft. Once softened, the head easily pops off. And here you can see I'm checking to make sure that I didn't do any damage to the net peg. Then using a flathead screwdriver and some needle nose pliers, I scrape the hair plugs out of the inside of the head and I pull them out. These plugs were just very hard to get out. I don't normally have this much trouble, but usually I scrape everything and then pull it out. But if you notice, I'm still got the part line in there. The part in this doll was just very stubborn. And then using 100% acetone, I wipe the face paint and clean the scalp as well. Now to prep some hair for rerouting. I decided I wanted her to have an ombre effect to her hair, so I decided to dye some nylon doll hair. Using a pot that I intend to use only for dyeing, I put my dye into the pot and then I heat it on low heat. And I would also like to note that I am using Rit Dye More, which is specially formulated to work on synthetic fabrics, so it works for nylon doll hair. And then I just start dipping my hair into the pot and making sure I'm keeping the tips in there longer just to get them a deeper color. Once I'm satisfied with the color, I go to rinse it out. I do an initial pass of just rinsing in water until the water runs clear. Then I do some passes with Dawn dishwashing liquid, just soaping up the hair really good and rinsing it out. And I make sure to do this until my soap bubbles no longer are tinted. Then I go ahead and prep the scalp with a few coats of acrylic paint to get a base color down, and then I start the reroute. I reroute her hair following the Doll Planet's technique of the knotting method, and I just wrap the hair around my finger, slide my needle through the hair, gathering it all, and then tighten the hank around the needle head. Then plug it into the head. And I first reroute all around the perimeter of the hairline, and then I go in and do the part line. Then for her part, I was very unhappy with the way those holes looked from the previous hair. Like I said, I had a lot of trouble getting all of those plugs out of her head, and so I was worried that trying to reroute in those same holes would damage the scalp and possibly make a split occur. So I drew her in a new part line and rerouted down that instead. And as you can see, I didn't pre-punch any holes. The rerouting tool is generally sharp enough just to poke it down in there. And so I just went down one side. And once that side was filled, I came back and plugged hair into the other side and folded it the other way to create the part line. And then onto the face up. And because she is another Katrina repaint, there is lots of wonderful colors to be used in the color pencils and just a few pastels. I first based her in 2 coats of Mr. Super Clear, and then I went ahead and tackled getting all of her designs based in. And that's really all I did on this first layer, was just getting those shapes down. For me, that's just the easiest way to work because I change these shapes just so much when I'm working on them in the beginning, getting that sketch in. Then I go ahead and give her another spray and start on layer 2. And on layer 2, I'm actually basing in all of the colors. And I wind up getting a lot of colors based in here and then deciding at the end of the layer, I didn't like the pink. I felt like her pink skin tone was just a little bit too pink, and so I went ahead and blushed her completely in the face with white pastel. So after I did the white blushing, I went ahead and sealed again and then started building up the color once more. It really threw me off because on my previous 2 repaints that were Katrinas, they were both on Lagunas. And I guess because her skin is so pale and on the cool side, it wasn't really noticeable that she didn't have a white base. but I guess with working with a Draculaura that's got such a pink tone, it was just too warm. So after I've got all those colors built back up, I decided that I wanted her to have sunken in shaded cheeks. So I start blushing right under that line with some black pastel, and then I blend it out with a Q-tip. And while I'm still on this layer, I decide to go ahead and start basing in her eyes. I first apply a light pink to her waterline, and then I use a deeper red towards the corners. And since she is such a colorful doll, I decided to give her a very neutral brown eye color. I felt it would contrast nicely with the face paint and go with her hair. And once I'm happy with the iris shape, I go ahead and start basing in the 3 shades of brown that I'm going to use. Now this doll was a commission that I did for someone, and the only criteria I had was make it a Katrina. Apparently their kitchen is done in the Sugar Skulls, and they just gave me free reign, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoy designing these Katrina dolls. This doll was actually finished back in early December, I do believe, but I am just now getting the video out for her. I have to say, when I am working on these Katrina dolls, one of the things that helps me out a lot is to actually sketch out the designs I intend to make and color schemes on a piece of paper before I put it on the doll. If I don't have my plan already, when I've gotten this far, I'm in trouble. My final design on this one was actually a combination of 2 designs I had done. I really liked the top half of one and the bottom half of the other. Then I go ahead and I darken up that eyeliner line and start shading in the sunken in areas around her eyes. For this I decided to use a purple, and I apply a base coat of purple down and try to keep in mind of where the eyelid would naturally have more shadow so that there's still some definition there. I even use a little bit of a black pastel to push that a little further. And then I go ahead and add the black lines into her lips, and that is the final step that I do on this layer. On the 4th layer here, I go ahead and start brightening up those scaleras, making sure they're really white. I want those to pop. And then I start highlighting some of the areas around the face, and I just apply a light pastel pencil to that, and then I will blend it out with a blender pencil. I find these blender pencils very helpful for just making smooth transitions of colors, especially within color pencils. Using some pan pastels, I give her lips a pass just to pinken up her lips some so they're not quite so stark. Then I go ahead and using a very sharp pencil, I give her some lashes, both top and bottom. And then I go in and start adding in some details to the irises, and I use the little striations with the darker and the lighter tones. Then the final thing on this layer I do before sealing is I apply a little bit of black pastel across the eye to give it a more round feel and give the eyeball itself some shading. And on my final layer here, I go ahead and I give her catch lights and apply some highlights into the waterline with some whitewash. And then I give her a seal her final time, and her face up is done. For her clothes, I decided to give her a mermaid flare skirt, so I have patterned out something that is very tight fitting to the knees, and I just sew up those sections at the side seams. Then I take a waistband where I've hemmed the top edge and I attach this to the top of the skirt. Now for the flounces. I'm taking these 2 circular pieces of fabric that I've cut. One I've split in half, and I'm going to be sewing those pieces to each side of the split in the other one. Now I repeat these steps with a smaller circle because I plan to have 2 rows of ruffles. Now I sew a gathering stitch to the inner edge of both of those pieces. To gather them, the first thing I do is I take a piece of embroidery thread that I cut to the length that the gathering will need to be. Then I just pull one of the gathering threads and gather until I reach that length. Once I've reached that length, I go ahead and I tie off my gathering threads. Then I distribute the gathering so that they're even throughout the entire piece. After I've gathered both the small and the large ruffle, I baste those together. Once basted, the ruffles can be sewn right sides together to the bottom of the skirt. At this point, I go back and I clean up any of the gathering or basting stitches that you can still see. This just makes for a cleaner looking garment. The final things to do on this is to attach the Velcro and to sew up the back. The first thing that I work on the top is the ruffle, and what I do is I take a long rectangle of fabric and I've trapped an embroidery thread in this. This is going to be my thread that I use to gather since it's such a long piece. One end of the thread is actually sewn into the fabric and the other one is loose, so when I start pulling on it, it just gathers it nicely. For the base construction of the top, I first sew up the darts that are near the bust line. Then I attach the front to the backs at the side seams. And off camera you can see I've went ahead and added these grommets in, and I have just laced this up with some ribbon. Now to attach the ruffle to the shirt. The first thing I do is attach it from where the right arm starts to where the left arm starts, just across the front, leaving the back open. After that's attached, I place it onto the doll to do the next part. I drape the ruffle across the arms and then I pin it onto the back where I would like it to connect. I just sew that up and I cut off any excess. Now on to her accessories. I decided I wanted her to have a lacy skull crown thing, so I designed this little lace bit headband, and I didn't know exactly how I wanted the skull to sit on there, so I printed up a skull separately. And then I just got those pieces cleaned up. I got the pieces based out in their colors, and then I gave the skull a dry brushing in brown just to kind of give it an aged effect. Now that they're both painted, I can decide exactly where to place these two pieces, and I get them combined. And then finally I go ahead and get her shoes painted. I base them out in black and give the skulls a gold dry brush, and then give her some maroon red on the bottoms. And with that, she's done. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Just please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. And remember, always be creating.